Shy and rather retiring by nature, she'd gone to London at the urgings of a school friend and her mother, and although she quite enjoyed her job as a secretary in a busy advertising agency, she'd never really lost her longing for the peace and relative simplicity of the village she'd grown up in. She'd met Blake at a party, flattered and slightly bemused that he should single her out for attention. She knew she wasn't exactly unattractive, but she'd lived in London long enough by then to realise that London males expected more than a heart-shaped face, deep blue eyes, black hair, and a willow-slim body. They wanted women who could converse with them on their own level, sharp, witty women who didn't blush and fumble awkwardly, women who were as sophisticated and worldly as they were themselves. She'd recognised Blake instantly from a current affairs television programme he'd participated in, but the effect of his lean, sun-tanned features and his air of cool cynicism were far more devastating in real life than they were on the television screen. She'd had the impression that his green eyes were laughing at her, but when seconds later they roved her body with a sensual appraisal that was almost a physical caress, she hadn't been able to hide her response from him. Blake. Even now, just thinking about him made her pulses race and her mouth go dry. He had been, at first, a patient and then a very passionate lover, drawing her out of her shell of shy reserve, teaching her to please him and find joy in her own pleasure. As befitted a man who lived on the edge of danger, he brought excitement and challenge into her life. But she was constantly worried that she would never be enough for him, that after a while her inability to meet him as an equal would lead him to grow bored with her. Before their marriage, he'd dated sophisticated, glamorous women, and Jaime had always secretly compared herself to them and found herself wanting. If she hadn't blurted out to him that she loved him, and that he would be her first lover, would he still have wanted to marry her? "He married you because that was the only way he could get you into bed," Susie had told her tauntingly. "But you'll never keep him. He's bored already. You see, Blake's like that. When he wants something, he goes after it single-mindedly. That's what makes him such a good reporter. He wanted you because you were a challenge." And she, instead of trying to understand him, had begged him to give up his job and find another one that would mean less travel. That had been the cause of their final row. Perhaps because her own father had died when she was so young, she'd always cherished in her mind a clear picture of what she wanted her life to be, and that picture contained herself, her husband, and their 2 children, living cosily in a village very like the one she'd been brought up in, a safe, secure little world, a universe away from Blake's lifestyle. People thought she'd got over him and her marriage to him. She talked openly to Fern about her father. She answered whatever questions people asked her, but only she knew the truth. She still loved Blake, as desperately now as she had done the day she left him. But at least in the intervening 4 years she'd achieved some maturity, she reflected, as she brought her Minnie to a halt outside the play-school building. At least she'd finally accepted that Blake had the right to make his own decisions about his career and his life. But that didn't stop her regretting her folly in leaving him. If she had stayed, perhaps they could have worked something out, perhaps... Angrily, she dragged her mind away from the past. Blake had made it more than clear how much he regretted their marriage. He'd never even asked to see Fern. He hadn't wanted a child, and although he'd offered to support them financially, he'd made no attempt to get to know his daughter. Charles had told her she ought to get a divorce. She'd known Charles Thompson since her school days, and she knew without any conceit that he would marry her tomorrow if she gave him any encouragement. It was ironic that Charles was tailor-made to fit her childhood image of the perfect husband and father, but he was as exciting as cold rice pudding, and her body, which had been away